Alright, so lesson 1.1 is going to be about adding and subtracting positive and negative integers. So this should be a complete review from last year and from years and years of math, but you are not going to rely on a calculator for these. So as best you can, I want you to learn these 3 rules that will help you add and subtract eventually these integers. So let's talk about rule number 1. This is something that you know from when you were back and you were 5 years old. Okay, so this isn't really a rule, but it's something just to keep in mind. You don't need anything fancy to solve this. If both terms are positive, then you're just going to add like you've been adding since you were a little kid. So 8 plus 4 is 12. So that's easy enough. Same type of rule is going to apply if you have 2 negative numbers. So if both terms are negative and it wants you to add them, then you're going to add those numbers up, but this time the answer is going to be negative. So same type of rule as this one, but if both are negative, you're going to add them up, but your answer is going to be negative this time. So if you remember back from last year, both of these rules have something called, they're the same sign. So I like to call it same sign add. So if you have the same signs on both of your terms, you're just going to add them up, and then whatever the sign is that they both are, that's what you make your answer. So remember, same sign add. Now this third rule is a little different. So if you notice down here, our signs are different for both terms. So if both terms have opposite signs, then you're going to do something a little different. You're going to subtract the numbers this time, and the answer is going to take the sign of the bigger number. And I'll go through that in a minute. So let's walk through this. So they're different signs, so my rule is telling me that I have to subtract them. So I'm going to ignore this negative right now. I'm just going to do 10 minus 3. So totally different than what you see right here. So 10 minus 3 is going to be 7. And I'm going to take the sign of the bigger number. So if I ignore that negative right there, what is bigger, 10 or 3? 10 is the bigger number. That number is negative, so I'm going to make my answer negative. So think of it this way. If you owe someone $10, you're in the hole $10, but then you give them $3, you're still in the hole $7. So sometimes thinking of it in terms of money too will help. Okay, so since this is a different rule, it's not same sign add, you're going to say opposite sign subtract. So opposite sign subtract. So if you can remember SSA and OSS, that should help you remember those rules for addition. So let's quickly go through these examples so you can see them in action. So our first example here, we have same signs. So I'm going to remember my rule, same sign add. 3 plus 2 is 5. They're both negative, so my answer is going to be negative. Second problem, they have different signs, so it's going to be opposite sign subtract. So 7 minus 2 is going to give us 5. The bigger number is 7, and 7 is negative, so my answer is going to be negative. Third one, we have opposite signs again, so opposite sign subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. The bigger number is 5, and that's positive, so my answer is positive. And the last one has 3 terms, so just break it down into the first 2. Same sign, so same sign add. So that's going to give me 4. They're both negative, so my answer is negative. I'm going to bring down that third term. Now I have the different rule. So this uses both rules within it. So I'm going to subtract. The bigger number is positive, so my answer is positive. So that's how you add positive and negative integers. Let's talk a little bit about subtracting them. So our goal when we're subtracting positive and negative integers is pretty much we want to make the problem addition, so that way we can use the same 3 rules that we were using before. So in order to make these problems into addition problems, we're going to do something called adding the opposite. So we can totally change these problems. They're going to give you the exact same answer, but they're going to look like addition problems. So there's quite a process that you have to do in order to do that. So let's look at this example. We have -5 minus a -6. Now right now this probably hurts your brain because there's so many negatives going on. So in order to make it so we can comprehend it and actually solve it, we're going to keep this first term exactly how it is. The subtraction sign right here, we're going to change it to add. We're adding, and then the opposite. So this last term is what you change to opposite of what it is. So if it's a -6, the opposite would be a +6. So once we rewrite it, we don't need 2 plus signs there. It's a little bit easier to comprehend because we've changed it so it doesn't have a million negative signs, and it's an addition problem, so we can use the rules that we were using before. So if we have a -5 plus 6, using the rules we were talking about, this would be opposite sign subtract. So we subtract them, and the bigger number is positive, so my answer is going to be positive. So let's look at these examples, and then we'll be on our way. So this first one here, I don't want you to get too caught up in the rules that I'm giving you. If you have a problem like number 1, just think about it. 9 minus 6. You've been doing that since you were 5. So we can just do 9 minus 6. We don't need a rule. We don't need to add the opposite. We're just going to do it. And the answer is 3. So if you can do it without any of those rules, go ahead and do that. This one is another one that we're going to have to get rid of some of those negatives. So we're going to change this to an addition problem by adding the opposite. So now it's just 10 plus 8. That's going to give us 18. This one here, 15 minus 20, looks like it might be easy like number 1, but we have the bigger number in front, so it might be easier if we add the opposite here. So add the opposite. So 15 plus a -20, this is going to be an opposite sign subtract. So we're going to subtract the two numbers. The bigger number is negative, so my answer is negative. And then the last one here, if we add the opposite, notice how the opposite of a +3 is going to be -3, so add the opposite. There's always 2 steps that you have to do, so don't just change it to addition and call it a day. You have to add the opposite. So we have -3 plus a -3, that's going to be same sign add. And we have 6, and they're both negative, so my answer is negative. So remember the 3 rules that we're talking about, same sign add, opposite sign subtract, they only work for addition. So in order to use those rules at the bottom here when we're subtracting, you have to add the opposite. So don't forget that extra step when you're subtracting.